everybody, Alan Barnoski here with a lesson for Acoustic Guitar Magazine. And today we're looking at the guitar styles of Norman Blake. Norman Blake is one of the greatest acoustic flat pickers really ever. So if you're not familiar with his playing, that is something you need to check out. There is a write-up in Acoustic Guitar Magazine about his background and his influence and his guitars and his playing style, all that kind of stuff. So definitely check that out. In today's video, we're really going to be diving in to his playing styles, and we'll go through the tablature that's shown in the magazine, Acoustic Guitar Magazine. You can also find it at acousticguitar.com. So you'll want to reference those as well as we're going through this. What we're going to be looking at is first Norman Blake's rhythm approach, mostly focused in the right hand. So we'll go through a few different rhythm patterns, and then we will apply those to a number of different songs that Norman Blake plays. And then we'll look at also some of his more kind of melody lead-based playing as well. So to start, let's just jump right in and start looking at some of Norman Blake's rhythm patterns that he uses in the right hand. There is one thing before we start looking at that we're going to have to establish as kind of a foundation, and that is the boom chuck pattern. I assume a lot of folks probably are familiar with this, but just in case you're not, the boom chuck over a G chord sounds like this. All right, so I'm just playing an open G chord here, and the way I usually play a G is by muting the A string. So some folks will use their first finger there on the B. You can do it either way. So this is just a G chord. The boom chuck has a low G note, followed by a strum on the treble strings, and then the D note, followed by a strum on the treble strings. These are all quarter notes, they're all downstrokes. All right, so that's the boom chuck. One important thing for a boom chuck is you want those bass notes nice and strong. All right, one thing you want to avoid is you don't want those treble strums to be loud. You want those as just kind of the background. You want those bass notes nice and loud. All right, so that's the boom chuck. And now with that out of the way, we can look at some of Norman Blake's rhythm patterns. We kind of had to establish the boom chuck because everything he does is based on that pattern. So the first one is example 1A. We're going to look at three of these, 1A, 1B, 1C. So we're going to start here with 1A. Sounds like this. All right, what this is it starts with that boom chuck. And then we have a downstroke on the D, an upstroke on the G, and then a down strum on the top two strings, and then an up strum on the top two strings. All right, so that sounds like this. We want those bass notes nice and strong. Another thing that Norman Blake does when I hear him play, I don't know if this is something he's ever talked about, but I just hear this when I hear him play, is it sounds like there's kind of a swell at the end of the measure on those strums. It sounds like he kind of like swells into the strum and then backs off. All right, so just to recap, a few things to keep in mind, those bass notes nice and strong, and then also kind of that swell at the end of the measure. You can hear this all over the place. Norman Blake uses this rhythm pattern all the time. If you want to hear it at a more moderate tempo, because he usually does this very quickly, a good version of this is on the song Are You From Dixie? It's off the album Blackberry Blossom. It's still not slow, but he does it at a more moderate tempo, and you can kind of hear the nuance of this pattern going on. Okay, so let's look at the next one. This is example 1B. It's very similar. It starts with that boom chuck, and then it ends with a cross pick across the top four strings. All right, so that's down on the D, up on the G, down on the B string, and then up on the top string. All right, so very similar as 1A, except we've got more of this cross-picking motion instead of like a strummy motion. Again, you want those bass notes nice and strong. Okay, now let's look at the last one, example 1C. And this one uses a cross-pick motion throughout the entire measure. It sounds like this. So the first half of the measure, so that's down, up, and then the second half of the measure, same as the previous example, down, up. And we want those bass notes, again, nice and strong. Okay, so that's the idea. So these three patterns are closely related. As you can tell, they're all based on that boom chuck. There are definitely more patterns that Norman Blake uses, but these are three that I think are kind of foundational to his playing, and especially in the examples we'll look at. So now let's take a look at example 2. This actually comes from one of Norman Blake's tunes. This is the intro to Bringing in the Georgia Mail off of his first record, which is Home in Sulphur Springs. Sounds like this. It's example 2 if you're following along. So as you can see, this is kind of based off that cross-picking pattern. We're incorporating now a walking bass pattern over this G chord. There's this bass pattern. You want those bass notes, you guessed it, be nice and strong. All right, and last of all, if you listen to the recording, the way Norman Blake plays it, it sounds a little bit different. And the reason is because Norman Blake has a very loose right hand. And what's going on, I think, is that he's using this same kind of pattern, except it's a little bit looser. And what's happening is he's hitting multiple strings at once. It sounds a little bit more like this. I think that's a little bit closer to what you'd hear on the record. Again, it's because he's got this loose right hand hitting multiple strings at once. The way Norman Blake describes his right hand motion is it's like flicking water from the fingers. So imagine you just wash your hands, you don't have a towel nearby, and you just gotta flick those hands out to get the water off. It's that same motion with the right hand. So that's the idea there. I would suggest getting example 2 so you can play it nice and cleanly and accurately. And once you have it clean, then start to incorporate some of that looseness. Okay, so far we've looked at Norman Blake's playing just over the G chord. What we'll do now is look at another example from, this is example 3, if you're following along. This is the tune Little Joe. It's capo 2. Again, this comes from his first record, which is Home in Sulphur Springs, capo 2. And what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be shifting over different chord changes. Then we'll also be incorporating some of these rhythm patterns and also some more advanced walking bass lines. So I'll just go ahead and play through this example 3, so you get a sense of what this sounds like. 1, 2, 3. So there it is. That's example 3. There's a lot to process here if you've never really worked in playing in the style before. Again, there's these different elements, switching chords, using these different rhythm patterns, and incorporating the walking bass. It's a lot to take in. So what I would recommend is, if you're first getting used to playing like this, is just do the boom chuck over these chord changes. So that would be like this. what I'm doing there is just doing the boom chuck pattern, and I'm just doing it over the chords that are shown above the staff in example 3. Once you get a good handle on that, stick with the same pattern in the right hand, but now just start to incorporate the walking bass lines. So just the boom chucks, but now you're using the walking bass lines that are in the lower 3 strings. It would sound like this. Once you get that down solid and you got it memorized and you feel good, then you can start working on some of these more advanced right hand patterns that we looked at earlier and that are shown in the tab. If you're listening along to Little Joe, this bass line is under the mandolin solo. It's underneath, I think, the first mandolin solo. But listen to the entire song and just maybe several times and just get a handle on all these different walking bass patterns, different rhythm patterns that are being used. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Okay, so far we've been looking at Norman Blake's rhythm approach for playing backup guitar. Now we're going to dig a little bit more into how he would use the same kind of right hand motion, but also incorporate some melodies and some leads and that kind of thing. A really good example to start is the tune Under the Double Eagle. This is off of the record Whiskey Before Breakfast, and it goes like this. No capo, and we're in the key of C now. All right, example 4, if you're following along with the tab. Here we go. Okay, so there we go. That's example 4. Example 5 now goes a little bit even further from just this right hand approach and incorporates some more single note lead lines. It's a mix of both. There's single note lead lines, there's also strumming. It's kind of, I like to think of this as self-accompaniment. Norman Blake is playing the melody, but he's also accompanying himself with chords. On all these tunes we've looked at so far, and I think all of them that we have here, these are all solo guitar tunes. So there's no accompaniment. Norman Blake is just doing this himself. So this is the tune Arkansas Traveler. This comes off of the recording from Live in McCabe's. It's an amazing record. Definitely one to check out if you haven't heard it already. And this is Norman Blake's first pass through the tune. He plays it many times, but this one is very close to the melody, and it's a great little arrangement of the tune Arkansas Traveler. I'll go ahead and play it, and you can get a sense of what I'm talking about here. So there's Arkansas Traveler. Hopefully in that tune you can hear those different lead lines and also the self-accompaniment. And I think this approach that we've been looking at for Norman Blake's playing, these right-hand patterns using these big chord shapes, bringing out the melody within those chord shapes, that is kind of the, I think that's the majority of his playing when you listen to his many recordings over the years. However, that's not all of it. Something that Norman Blake would do often are quick chromatic runs that go all the way up and down strings, and these are single note lines. You can hear this in the tune we're going to be looking at, which is 9 Pound Hammer. This is from Live in McCabe's solo guitar tune. You can hear this, throughout recordings that he's done with Tony Rice. You can hear it on stuff that he's done with, if you find like live footage of him playing with various different like jams at festivals with bluegrass groups and guitar workshops and that kind of thing, you hear this all over the place. It's really kind of like a big part of his playing, I think. So I'll go through this example so you can hear what I mean. First, I'll just play the chords so you get a sense of how the song goes and what the chord structure is. Then I'll go back through again and play the lead. And this is how it goes. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so there it is. That's example 6. This comes somewhere in the middle of that recording from 9 Pound Hammer. If you listen to this track, it's like 4 minutes long with tons of lines like this. Also lots of this rhythmic kind of melody self-accompaniment that we're talking about. It has it all. So definitely listen to this track. I'll play the example a little bit slower one time. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so everything we've looked at so far has been from earlier on in Norman Blake's solo recording career. Everything was from the 1970s. So this last selection comes from later on. This is from the album Far Away Down on a Georgia Farm. I think it came out in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. And this is an arrangement of the tune called Maple on the Hill. This song has been done by the Carter family and many other folks over the years. But I really love Norman Blake's guitar arrangement on this. Again, it's a solo vocal and guitar number, and it's slowed down quite a bit from everything else we've looked at, but it's very melodic, just lovely sounding, key of F with no capo. So we've got this big bar chord here. I'll go ahead and play through it so you get a sense of what this sounds like, and have a few more thoughts after playing through it. 1, 2. Okay, so there it is, Maple on the Hill. So most of the time Norman Blake is using alternating picking, and we kind of touched on that at the very beginning when we were looking at his right-hand approach. Alternate picking means down strokes on down beats. So if you have multiple eighth notes in a row, those would be down, up, down, up. However, in this tune, in a lot of Norman Blake's later playing, he uses a lot of consecutive downstrokes, and that gives a sound of a like old-timey, very classic feel. In one spot where you really want to do this in this tune, and I'm pretty sure it's what he's doing on the record, is that last C chord. So it's the shape, the bottom of the C chord, and you play that C note and push through it, and now your pick is landing on the 4th string, so you push through that string, and land on the next one, and push through that one. And that's how you get that sound. You can also do more downstrokes throughout this tune, like in that bass run. That might sound good using all downstrokes. But one spot I definitely hear Norman Blake doing it on the record is over that C chord. All right. So I hope this lesson has been helpful. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. You can find my email. You can drop a message below. Contact Acoustic Guitar and they can relay it to me. Any of those will work. Thank you all so much for sticking with this long video here, and I hope you enjoy it, and yeah, have fun.